Okay, thank you, and welcome to the second webinar that the CRC is running. I will just do a little bit of an overview of the presentation. First, we'll just do some quick housekeeping. I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the CRCNA and why we're here and what we're trying to achieve. Run through the key dates for the EOI. Talk to you about our research priorities and how to be eligible, and then I will talk to you about the application form, what's important, and make sure that we've got enough time at the end for questions for you guys to ask me. So I'll start off with the housekeeping. Just letting you know I'm recording the webinar, so we can post it up online for other people to see. I'll try to answer all the questions at the end. If we don't get time, please still submit them via the Q&A function within the webinar, and Carla will get back to you in writing. Excuse me. If you have any technical issues with the webinar, use the chat function to contact Carla directly. She's sitting here just out of screen, and she'll be coming online to help us with the questions a bit later on. And if there's anything else, use the chat function to contact her, please. So CRCNA is operating obviously within the Northern Australian region. So we're searching for research that has impact in Northern Australia. We have a head office in Townsville and people located in Cairns, Darwin and Broome for you to work with. It doesn't mean that the research that you're providing has to be being delivered sort of within that region, but the impact needs to be delivered within that region. We have a 7-person board. There's one director that's not listed there. We had a board meeting yesterday where Tracy Hayes was appointed to fill a casual vacancy until the next AGM. Our chair is Sheridan Morris, and our deputy chair is Don McDonald. All of our directors live and work in Northern Australia across all 3 jurisdictions within Northern Australia. In addition to that, the CRC maintains a number of strategic alliances with organisations like Cotton Research, GRDC, FIAL, and a number of other CRCs. In developing your expression of interest for our project, please make sure that you get in touch with one of our project managers. We've got Kristen in the NT, Lindy in Western Australia, and Ian in Queensland. Ian's just started, so he's really looking forward to getting involved in this funding round. And Lindy's quite new as well. Kristen's been around in the team for a number of years now. I highly recommend that you work with these guys when you're developing your EOI. As a general rule, those people that have taken the time to talk to the project managers tend to submit more well-formed expressions of interest, and as a consequence tend to have more success during the assessment period. So we've organised the CRC around this strategic plan, I guess, which is a 1-page representation of it. The purpose of our CRC is to undertake research that's industry-led, and that's very important for CRCs, that de-risks Northern Australian development. So that could be through improving regulatory burdens, it could be through reducing improving efficiencies within supply chains. It could be a productivity improvement, a better organisation of a supply chain, or understanding a market or a market need better. So it's quite a broad remit. We can invest in agriculture, food and aquaculture, Northern Australian health service delivery, or traditional owner-led business development in the areas of either ag and food and aquaculture or northern health service delivery. I'll leave you to sort of contemplate the different objectives of each of our research programs, but essentially there's supply chain development, new and existing industry research, building capacity within traditional owners, and also our education program. We have an area dedicated specifically for health service delivery, and our de-risking program, Research 7, which is about working with decision makers to improve regulatory policy, decision making, planning around Northern Australian development. This is the timeline for this year's funding call. Expressions of interest opened on the 10th of August and will be open until the 30th of September. Any question we get asked, we try to publish that on the website to give everyone applying for these grants the same, not grants, these expressions of interest, the same amount of information. So in order to make sure everyone's got the same amount of information, we don't publish questions after or respond to questions after the 23rd of September. The process of assessing occurs after the closure. We use advisory committees made up of jurisdictional staff across Northern Australia to help inform our decisions. The decisions ultimately rest with the board, and that process will get back to you by January, whether you've been successful or unsuccessful. So if you're successful in the EI round, then we will work with you closely to develop your project up to full application, and that process can take anywhere between a month, month and a half and 6 months, depending on how many participants, how difficult the project is to pull together, and also how long it takes to get contracts through legal parts of universities. That can vary. Most of the universities now we have a contract with, so that's process is a lot quicker than it used to be. I can't stress highly enough how important it is for you to make sure you apply through the website on the form. We won't accept it any other way. So if you're not sure how to do that, we can talk you through it. Please just get in touch with us if you have any questions regarding this webinar or the process. We're here to help you as much as we can. So the priorities for this funding call, we obviously have our situational analyses that we've just finished across most major agriculture and aquaculture industries in Northern Australia, and that work has informed our research priorities moving forward. So we're taking what industries told us through those analyses and then seeking projects that address the priorities of industry. In addition to that, we're looking to our horticulture analysis to deliver the next level of that work. So that's been focused in mangoes, lychees and avocados. So we're looking to expand that work across other horticultural sectors. But more generally, we also look at other R&D that addresses agriculture across Northern Australia. So new ideas that you may not have been identified through the analyses. So we still take new things that we haven't sort of indicated as a priority for us. And of course, we're still in our health service delivery. We ran a situation analysis on that sector, and that's helped inform our priorities there. And our traditional owner-led business development, we're still seeking projects in that space. Specifically, just to give people a bit of a feel for what we're looking for in beef, projects which help increase productivity on farm is still important, but more projects that spread across the full gamut of the industry and aren't specifically focused on one business would be highly preferable. And also post-farm gate value-adding opportunities for the beef sector are still a priority. Within the rice sector, we're still focused on looking at farming systems and how the rice can fit in with other existing or new broadacre farming systems and the best way to do that, and obviously priorities around post-farm gate infrastructure to store and handle the rice as it moves through the supply chain. Within aquaculture, there's further research that's needed around the growing industry and its needs for infrastructure to support that, and also continued investigation of how to best control and mitigate disease within those highly sort of controlled systems. For horticulture, as I mentioned, expanding our industry analysis to other areas of the sector is quite important. We still need to better understand the infrastructure and policy implications of facing Northern Australian horticulturists. So we're focusing our work in that area for horticulture. Forestry, big priority around how best to engage with traditional owners around native forest management, as well as projects that investigate how best to implement silvopastoral systems for forestry cattle operations. Within broadacre cropping, obviously still quite a fledgling industry in Northern Australia, so still need to validate the potential of crops at a commercial level. So commercial trials, I guess, are still important to bringing people into the sector. And again, like rice, how best to optimise storage and handling for what is a growing sector within Northern Australia. As previously mentioned, outside of our listed priorities, we're still happy to consider new ideas, new approaches, new projects, as long as they obviously are in line with the strategic priorities for the Northern CRC, and those priorities are listed in the guidelines that you can access from our website. Within health service, our focus moving on from our situational analysis will be to look at projects which can map community needs at a more local level, and look at the existing services that are there for that community, and then understanding where the gaps are, and from understanding those gaps, start to investigate new models that can provide a health service framework that meets those needs of the community that we've already mapped. So that's a very big priority for us, which will be really getting our teeth into in the next 12 months. In addition to looking at those opportunities, we still are happy to look at projects that can develop an export industry in Northern Australia around health services. So either looking at the potential for that, or actually piloting or trialling opportunities in those areas, whether it be service delivery or even education in that space. And again, like with agriculture, looking at other new models of care or other projects that still help the CRC deliver on its strategic priorities within Northern Australia for health service delivery. When it comes to new models and approaches to develop traditional owner-led businesses, this is a priority of the board. It's not a CRC contractual requirement, but the board have said it's very important, given the significant ownership of land and assets within Northern Australia that are with traditional owners, that we make sure we have a focus on this area. NALSMA has undertaken some work in the last 2.5 years around what type of models could work. So we're still looking for models. The NALSMA work has sort of led us to realise that we're keen to focus on models that don't necessarily just look at what is the best commercial opportunity for the asset or land that we're talking about, but more to come up with models that are a little bit more risk adverse in their implementation, and perhaps more incremental in the way that they scale up, as opposed to just trying to go big and go hard early. so that the traditional owner framework around, the governance framework around that can scale up at the same time as the business. Similarly, in that space, models that focus on activities that are preferred by that traditional owner group, not necessarily the best economic opportunity for that land, but more the one that the traditional owners are going to have an interest in and is culturally relevant, is obviously a priority for us. So it's not always purely an economic decision around what is the best opportunity to make the business work. But obviously it does still need to have a commercial element, and any projects which are testing those governance structures around those businesses are a priority for us. So on to eligibility. For us to consider your expression of interest, you need to have at least one partner representing the industry part of your research. For health, it tends to be more difficult to identify what industry is, but ultimately we're talking about the people delivering the service or are in direct contact with the patients or community. We really can't stress highly enough that we are a CRC, not a grant organisation, and as a consequence, there needs to be a co-contribution from the partners in these projects. We're co-investing with you, and we're going to be part of the research with you, and so there does need to be a significant, at least one-to-one co-contribution, and part of that contribution does need to be cash. We have looked at projects without cash before on special occasions, but it needs to be a very good project and a very good reason why there is no cash investment. Ultimately, cash gives us an indication that the end users are there, they're serious, and they want to invest, and that the research has the best chance of being picked up and implemented. So EOIs with a higher cash level are looked at more favourably. Obviously, it needs to be in the area of agriculture and food, Northern Health Service delivery, or a traditional owner-led business development in one of those two areas. And that research, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, does need to fall within the impact of that research does need to fall within Northern Australia, even if the research some of it's been conducted outside Northern Australia. Again, you need to apply it on the online form. Happy to help you with that if you're having any problems. This ensures we know exactly when the form was submitted, gets timestamped as soon as it hits the server, and we can see who's working on applications as they come through. You can save that application and come back to it. It'll send you a link that you need, and if you want to circulate that link to other people so they can work on the application, you can do it. But if you want to rework on that application, you need to go back in through the link that you create when you save it. And if you save it again, it'll create a new link. So that's how that works. We always get our EOIs at the last minute. It's human nature, I think, but can't stress enough that try not to leave it to the very, very last minute. And please try and complete every question. Again, talk to our project team. There's 3 dedicated people there to help you, and myself as well, to answer any questions, to give you pointers on what we're looking for, and help you nuance your EOI to give it the best chance of being considered. We've got written expression of interest guidelines. Get online, download them, have a look. It'll really help you focus, the way you present your research impact. And again, I mentioned that we will be publishing all the questions we receive from anyone, whether it be on these webinars, via email, or even over the phone. We record those and publish them, so everyone has the same opportunity and the same information. So that's all of the information I wanted to present. I see Carla's been rapidly writing down questions as they've come in as I've been speaking. So I might get Carla to ask me those questions and I'll respond as best I can.
Yes, so the first question that we have in is, will a project around the use of food waste to produce energy be considered?
I think it could. I would definitely encourage an EOI in that area. We can invest in value adding to agricultural produce, which is obviously food. So food waste is something that we'd look at, and no doubt if it's being used for energy, it'd have other byproducts as well. So yeah, I think that's certainly something we could look at.
And that would be under the new and emerging priority?
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you please give further information on the education and training opportunities, and will the CRCNA be funding Masters and PhD scholarships?
Yes, we are funding Masters and PhD scholarships. I think there's a portal on the website for people to make application for postdoctoral scholarships and stipends and PhDs. So at the moment, that program is being managed by Bronwyn McLean on a temporary basis while we work out the level of resources needed to maintain it. But I would encourage you to get online, have a look, and contact us if you're interested in having some PhDs. In addition to doing a PhD sort of outside in the education program, we welcome people to embed PhDs within their research projects, and look forward to people doing that. Very important as part of our capacity building process to increase the research capacity and capabilities of Northern Australia, so that after the CRC is gone, there is a legacy there of highly skilled researchers that can continue the work.
Yeah, so that's under the education program on our website. There's all the information about the types of scholarships that we have, and how you can get in touch with us about that. You mentioned that cash is important.
Mm-hmm.
Is there more leniency if the partner is a health non-profit organisation?
It's a good question, and it is. We're aware of the fact that, I guess, within health, it's culturally a bit different in terms of it's less usual for cash to be involved in the research proposals. We're happy to talk to people about what they can and can't achieve, but I'd encourage those non-for-profits in the health sector to think outside the box around where they may be able to access cash, and we do accept that, in this post-COVID sort of recovery period that we're going to be entering, that cash will become a little bit harder to get hold of from universities, from government, but we can match state government funds as the cash contribution, and think outside the box about maybe some philanthropic groups that might be really interested in improving health service delivery for regional and remote communities.
And further to that, Jed, during our health webinar, which was discussing the outcomes of our situational analysis, there was mention of the resources available for participants in the health space, particularly in the clinical setting, to link up with industry partners and to sort of access that sort of facilitation of brokering partnerships. So the response on that question and the EOI, and the webinar around the health situational analysis is available on our website as well, which might also give some more context around the health situational analysis as well.
Thanks, Tom.
Whether our industry partners, do industry partners have to be from Northern Australia?
No, as mentioned above, they can be international partners, they can be from Southern Australia, but the impact of the research needs to be predominantly benefiting the Northern Australian development agenda. There can be other impacts outside the Northern Australian space and people from outside Northern Australia as partnering in those projects, but our responsibility is to de-risk the development agenda for Northern Australia. So that's where the impact has to reside.
If research funding has been granted to an applicant from another source, could an applicant effectively double its research funding through the CRCNA, or is that applicant excluded? So I think the question is, if you've got funding from another source, are you still eligible to apply for our EOI?
I think it would depend on the source. We can't match Commonwealth funds, so essentially you can't double dip Commonwealth funds. But in that instance, it's probably best to have a conversation with the project manager just to work out, because it is a little complicated what can and can't be considered sort of new funding, I guess.
But you can't use Commonwealth. So if you've got a grant, I think on our previous...
If it's Commonwealth grant, then you definitely can't match Commonwealth funds,
yeah.
But we can match funds from RDCs that are matched with Commonwealth funds, so it's a little complicated. And
previously we had a question around specifically around ARC funding,
yeah.
And you had said that, and this question is available on our website as well, that whilst we might not be able to capture it in the budget or funding part of and declare it as part of the one-to-one contribution,
correct,
we can certainly still capture it, and it's certainly welcome as part of that project.
Yeah, so it would be considered a co-investment, and it would still make the project more attractive to us, but we wouldn't be able to count that as part of our match funding, and it's a requirement that over the 10 years that we're in existence that I match the $75 million the Commonwealth's putting up. So, it's something that we would only do in addition to finding matched funds.
What is the range of grants, and is there a preferred grant level, and is there a preferred project timescale? So I think we're asking, is there a minimum and maximum of how much CRC will fund a project, and what's the sort of length of project that we're looking to fund?
Sure. Traditionally, we've not accepted projects that run longer than 3 years. If you do have something that you feel needs more than 3 years, we would look at what we can get done in 3 years, and then if you need longer, we would look at reassessing a further application, provided the research is delivering. In terms of quantum, we have no minimum or maximum limit. We have done small, $50,000 investments in projects where it's quick and that has high impact, and then we've invested up to $1 million in some of our projects, making it a $4 or $5 million project overall. Generally, you can sort of get a feel for the quantum we have to invest in any given year, given where we have $75 million to invest over 10 years, and we're given a portion of that money each year. As you can do the math quickly, there's sort of, we're in the sort of quantum of $7.5 million a year, less, operational costs.
Would you be interested in creative approaches to health, co-creation methods through creative practice? For example, mental health prevention through storytelling and filmmaking, or is the health priority strictly clinical?
I think we'd look at anything. If you can demonstrate that it's going to have an impact, that there's people willing to pick it up and trial it, and I think I really hope people do come to us with some novel, new approaches, especially to mental health, which is a massive priority for our board. I can't speak for them as to whether they would, buy into it, but certainly from my perspective, I'd be very interested in something of that nature.
Has any work been done on the existing supply chain efficiencies of agricultural industries?
Yes, we've done some analysis around the Cairns supply chain, Townsville supply chain, and Greater Whitsunday supply chain. We've got a commitment to invest in Northern Territory agricultural supply chains to assess it, and also we're working on one in Western Australia. Those two supply chains, or potentially more than one in Western Australia, we're still developing up that project. So the three in Queensland are on our website and can be read, and have a number of recommendations for further work, which would be hoping would come through in this EOI round. In addition to that, we're going to do phase 2 of that Queensland work, where we bring all those three supply chain groups together to look at that supply chain in a totality, to see what the priorities might be for infrastructure and improving its efficiency through roads, other investments, that sort of thing.
And we're also just in the processes of finalising our reframing smart supply chains
Yes.
as well,
Yeah.
and our blockchain project with our mangoes and team provenance is also available for people to read on the website about that project.
Yeah. JCU is leading a collaboration amongst a number of universities to look at how we can make supply chains more efficient, and we're very close to releasing that report.
Would you consider applications for beef industry R&D which are co-funded by a mining company?
Absolutely, yeah. As long as the focus is in agriculture, the research, then the co-investment with the mining company is more than it's I think a very clever way of bringing in industry funds, or cash funds, I should say.
As long as that impact isn't just for a particular organisation, or
ideally, like there needs to be an element of, if it's going to be a project on one property, that there's an extension element to it so that it can be made available to other producers.
In regards to the CRCNA matching funds, does a project need cash contribution, or can in-kind contributions be considered as part of our matched funds?
Yeah, so it needs to be one-to-one cash and in-kind. So as a general rule, if your cash is around the 25% of that, and 75% is in-kind, that's sort of what you'd be aiming for as a minimum. That's not a hard rule, but it just gives you a bit of a guide as to what the more competitive EOIs we get are able to achieve.
Will a project that looks at the potential for the digitalisation of agriculture in the northern region be of interest? For example, the beef industry adopting virtual herding technology, as an example.
Yeah, that would certainly be something that we'd be interested in looking at. We'd want to make sure we're not duplicating MLA work, so we would hope that a project like that would have MLA as a partner, so that we ensure it sort of remains within the beef industry's strategic priorities as well. Yeah, ag tech is very important to us. We've just completed a project around connectivity within and digital literacy within Northern Australia, and the gaps that we have, which is meant to underpin the ability for our pastoral and agricultural sectors to become more digital and able to implement more technology.
What is the budget size of a project that the CRCNA would consider? What is the average size of past projects that have been funded? I
think I've already responded to that, but no limit, no minimum, but the average is around sort of 400,000 to 500,000 for investment from the CRC, and so around $1 million plus is the kind of average size of the total investment. Having said that, we've invested up to $1 million in a couple of projects, and 50,000 in others.
Is the first submission a short form proposal? And if there is a second stage long form proposal, when would successful first stage applicants be advised of the need to submit a more detailed proposal and to what deadline?
In this EOI round, you'll be notified either way in January. It is a short form expression of interest, and then you're able to go into more detail if that expression of interest is I guess accepted. The time frame from there is ideally we'd like to start research within 3 months, but it depends on the project, the number of participants, and how quickly we can get contracts signed through people's legal teams.
But certainly that's something that we work very closely with once the board has sort of deemed them successful. Yeah,
we really would like to turn them around within 3 months of advising success.
You mentioned embedding PhDs into projects. Does this mean that you offer scholarships as a separate request, or do they need to be matched one-to-one with co-contributions?
If they're embedded in the project, then they're being matched one-to-one. But we do offer additional scholarships outside of our projects that you can apply for as well. But if you're embedding them, that would be needed to be matched.
Must the industry partners capture most players in the field, or can be done on a one-to-one partnership between one researcher and one industry partner? So I guess the question is really asking how representative of the industry does an industry partner need to be?
Yeah, I think every industry is different. So talk to the project managers about how your situation, but generally very happy to look at partnerships that are just one industry person and a researcher, provided that the research has an element that other producers can learn from once it's done through either extension or through publications and wider communication of the research. And also, if you can demonstrate that the research you're doing is a priority for the sector through having been identified in our strategic work that we've done for our situation analysis, or through the industry strategic plan, or through perhaps engaging an industry body to partner in the project as well, to help with that dissemination of the research at the end. So again, it depends also on what people are researching and how commercial it is versus how industry good it is. So each one needs to be considered on its own merits, how we look at it.
In the agriculture front, would it be of any interest in developing novel crops such as cowpeas as a potential agriculture feed ingredient?
I think that's a priority for aquaculture, is creating a feed base that's close to Northern Australia for it to service that industry. Our research indicates that industry is going to grow substantially in the next 10 years. And so, and making sure the farming systems tie in with that. So if aquaculture is saying that type of crop is a priority for them to have, the feed protein requirements that they need, then we would certainly consider it.
Is HIA considered as a Commonwealth funder? So is that Horticulture Innovation Australia?
Yeah, so RDC. No, it's not. We have approached the CRC body to question this before around, obviously levy funds are matched one-to-one with Commonwealth funds, and once the Commonwealth puts it into the RDC, it's not considered Commonwealth money, so we can match the RDC contribution.
And certainly we've done that already with some of our broadacre cropping projects.
Yeah.
Would developing research capacity of clinicians fit in the health priority area?
I think generally developing research capacity fits within our CRC. So we don't fund direct training, But if there is, obviously through our PhD stipends and other education program, we can build capacity, or if there's a research project that helps us understand the needs and requirements to build capacity, and then go and seek appropriate funding from someone else to develop those needs, that would look at that. We will be building a workforce development project, which will look at the workforce needs in Northern Australia for not only agriculture, but at health service delivery as well. So I guess the short answer is yes, we'd look at it, but we just need to be sure of exactly what the project entails.
Yeah, so in that sort of space, you would really want this particular person to potentially contact us directly and talk through maybe what they're thinking their proposal is.
Yeah, yeah.
Has any work been done on water management in farms or parks based on the Internet of Things, live data input and artificial intelligence?
Not directly through this CRC, no. The closest we've got to that type of work is looking at the water trading scheme in the Mareeba Dimboola area, and using blockchain technology to improve the transparency, transaction costs, and ability to access water for that water system within the people that work within that system. That project's nearing completion as well.
So is that something that you would think would fit within one of our remits if someone was to sort of go down that path, Jed?
I think it would need to be indicated as a priority for the sector in which it's being done. But I think as we further develop the water resource in Northern Australia, if we can develop more efficient and effective ways of irrigating agriculture, it would be quite an important step for the industry. So we'd definitely look at it.
Also, so sort of a follow-up question to a previous one, can we use existing funding from federal government as cash contribution from industry? So
No.
I guess that's sort of like a workaround, but
yeah, we can have federal government money as a co-investment in the project, but it won't be considered match funds. There'll still need to be other funds making up the one-to-one.
If the federal government, if the industry partner had been given some funding from the federal government, we can't use it as one-to-one, but we can certainly capture it within the overall project.
We would note it and make the Commonwealth aware that project is receiving other Commonwealth funds.
Mm-hmm.
But when we report to the Commonwealth, we wouldn't count it in the funds being contributed to that project.
And it would also be something that you'd need to be pretty careful of, I'd imagine, making sure that the federal government funding to that industry partner is also allowed to be used to bolster your application for another federally funded grant or application.
Yeah.
I think we've already answered this one about the PhD embedding into our projects and whether or not that is considered one-to-one, and the follow-up question around the Hort Innovation Australia being considered as a Commonwealth funder. So if we miss this response to that question, we will capture and log these questions in a document, and that will be sent to all the participants as a document and published on our website. So if you have missed any of the questions and responses, we will make them available as well. Have you previously explored Northern Territory horticultural supply chains for the research as a research priority?
So we have made a $1 million commitment to do that, but we're still developing that project with the partners within Northern Territory Government and the airport. So we would like to, we're still working on that project, and we'll be investing in it.
Would you be considering research into microclimate of protected cropping in this round?
Yeah, potentially. We'd have to look at the detail of the project, but I think protected cropping at its varying levels of technology will play an important role in creating more of a high value production base for those perishable commodities that we can export to Asia. So certainly we're looking to expand that sort of protected horticultural sector.
And certainly our protected cropping project has really gathered some good support from industry and has seen some growers not previously in that space starting to dip their toes in the water. So there's certainly interest broadly across producers.
Absolutely.
Would the CRCNA be interested in a water management project for agriculture?
Probably, possibly, yeah. Without a little bit more detail, I'd encourage that person to call their most local project manager or the office and talk to us about what they're thinking about in terms of water management. Yeah, a little bit too broad to give a definitive response, but.
The supply chain work done in Queensland, does it cover information on cereal grains under broadacre cropping?
Yes, but we also have done a broadacre cropping situation analysis, which also looks at those regions specifically regarding cropping. So that's on the website as well. I'd encourage you to read that. It really does get into the detail for each of the regions. So it's quite a comprehensive and we think very good report around the broadacre cropping opportunities within Northern Australia. It largely indicates that the opportunity is there, but potentially really needs to be considered as part of an overall farming system with other production systems to make them profitable at this point in time.
Some Aboriginal communities previously had market gardens. Would this type of project be considered by the CRCNA?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. It would need to, as I said, be looking at how that may be able to be scaled up on a very gradual basis to a commercial development opportunity. But we have done some work with the Gudjata people here close to Townsville and the Mangala group as well. That project hasn't quite panned out as we would have hoped, but we've taken away some learnings around that. So always happy to have another go at those type of development opportunities.
And certainly we've identified that ensuring the project has that training and knowledge building and sharing capacity built into that project was a really critical learning that we've made from our market garden project that we've been doing here in Queensland.
Correct.
If a project has already commenced, can we apply for CRCNA funding?
On the face of it, it would suggest that it doesn't need funding if it's already commenced. If there's additional research required that wasn't able to be funded and that demonstrated it met our requirements and was eligible, we might look at the additional requirements to help support it. Or if it's a second phase of the research, but if it's already funded, we won't fund it again.
Can a Nafe loan be counted as part of cash contribution as it's a loan to an applicant, not a grant?
Look, I've never been asked that question before. I probably want to sit down and talk to the person about what they've got in mind. Generally, the way that the white paper established both the CRC and the Nafe was that the CRC would come and de-risk an investment, and then once the risk was at a point where Nafe would be willing to lend money, they'd come in and lend money for the infrastructure or the investment. So it probably isn't what was properly intended around using Nafe loans for research. But I would also sort of say that I guess it's Commonwealth money. So whilst it's a loan, I'm not sure how that would work, whether it would be the Commonwealth would consider it Commonwealth money still, or it becomes the applicant's money once it's loaned to them. Yeah, it takes some. We'd have to talk about it, but on the face of it, it looks a bit problematic.
There are no more questions that have come through either in the Q&A or the chat, Jed. So
Okay.
has anyone else got any sort of last questions before we sort of call time?
No?
Doesn't seem like it.
Very good. Well, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Again, highly encourage you to get in touch if you've got any other questions or any problems pulling together your expression of interest. And we look forward to seeing some really inventive and exciting projects over the next few weeks.